I drove myself to my own retirement party because my son-in-law had sold the truck my wife left me and put the money in his own account. He had done it 11 days after her funeral. I found out by accident, the way you find out most things that were never meant for you to know. My daughter called it a misunderstanding. My name is Raymond Kowalski. I am 64 years old. I spent 31 years working maintenance and repair for the city of Columbus, Ohio. I have a bad knee, a decent pension, and a 1997 photo of my wife Miriam standing in front of Niagara Falls with her shoes off and her head thrown back laughing. That photo is on my refrigerator. It has been there since 1997. It is the first thing I see every morning. My wife died of ovarian cancer in October of last year. She was 61. She fought for 14 months. I was with her every single day. The truck she left me was a 2019 Ford F-150 that we had bought together at a dealership in Westerville the summer before her diagnosis. We had argued pleasantly about the color. She wanted the dark red. I wanted the gray. She won. She always won. She always won. The truck was red. It was titled in both our names. When she died, it passed to me by right of survivorship. My son-in-law's name is Trent Mallory. He is 38 years old. He works in commercial real estate in Dublin, Ohio. He is good-looking in the way that men who know they are good-looking tend to be, always slightly performing, always slightly aware of who is watching. He married my daughter Cassie 9 years ago. I tried for 9 years to find things I genuinely liked about him. I found a few. He coached Cassie's nephew's Little League team one summer. He was patient with the kids. He remembered to ask about my knee when it was bad. On Miriam's last Christmas, when she was too weak to sit at the table, he carried her from the bedroom to the couch and set her down without being asked and without making it a production. I respected him for that one thing. But Trent had a quality I had noticed early and never stopped noticing. He kept track of things, not in the way careful people do, in the way that men who feel entitled keep track of what they believe they are owed. I did not know until November how long he had been keeping track of me. The day I found out about the truck, I was at the DMV on Morse Road trying to update the title to my name only. Standard probate step. The clerk pulled up the record and looked at a screen for a moment and then looked at me. Sir, this vehicle was sold at a private sale on October 29th. That was 11 days after Miriam's burial. I sat in the plastic chair at the DMV for a long time after I walked away from the counter. There was a woman next to me with 2 small children and a folder full of documents. One of the children was drawing on the back of an envelope. I watched him draw. He was making a dog, I think, or a horse. I did not ask. When I got home, I called Cassie. She told me Trent had handled it. She told me the truck had needed a lot of work, that it was costing more than it was worth, that Trent had found a buyer, and it had all been very fast, and she was sorry she hadn't mentioned it. She said the word sorry 3 times in 2 minutes. None of the 3 times did she sound like she meant it. I asked where the money had gone. She said it had gone toward some expenses from the estate. I asked, which expenses? She said she would have Trent call me. Trent did not call me. I thought about Miriam. I thought about the argument over the color. I thought about her sitting in the passenger seat on the way home from the dealership, her hand out the window in the summer air, satisfied. Then I started paying attention. My wife and I had been married for 39 years. We owned our house on Kenbrook Drive outright, no mortgage. We had paid it off in 2018. We had a joint savings account at Fifth Third Bank with a balance of a little over $94,000, money we had been setting aside since our 30s for what Miriam called the slow years. We had 2 IRAs, mine from the city pension system and hers from the 22 years she had worked as a medical transcriptionist for an insurance company in Hilliard. We did not have a lot, but we had enough. We had built enough. We had built enough deliberately, carefully, over 4 decades. Within 6 weeks of Miriam's death, I noticed that the joint savings account had been accessed 4 times. I was still listed as the account holder. But Miriam had added Cassie as a secondary signatory 8 years ago when she thought briefly that she might need help with bills during a minor surgery. Cassie had never used that access until October. 2 withdrawals of $4,000 each, one of $6,500, one of $30,800. Total $18,300, gone in 6 weeks. I did not call Cassie about this. I sat with it. Here is what you need to understand about my daughter. Cassie is not a bad person in the way that easy villains are bad. She does not lie the way people who are comfortable with lying do. She lies the way people who have been convinced by someone else lie. Trent was very good at convincing her. He had been good at it since before they were married. I had watched it happen slowly, the way you watch a tree lean into a prevailing wind over years, until you realize one day that the lean has become permanent. I loved my daughter. I still love my daughter. I was not angry at her the way I was angry at him. But I was angry. I called my brother-in-law. His name is Fletcher. He is Miriam's younger brother by 4 years. He is 57 now, lives in Zanesville, works as an electrician, has never particularly liked Trent, a fact he had the decency to keep mostly quiet for 9 years out of respect for Miriam. Fletcher is the kind of man who keeps a level in his truck at all times and uses it. He thinks straight, he speaks straight, he does not dress up what he means. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Ray, I need to tell you something too." He came to my house that Saturday. He sat at my kitchen table. I made coffee. He put both hands around his mug the way men who are about to say something difficult do, like they need something to hold. He told me that 3 months before Miriam died, when she was in the hospital for the second round of treatment, Trent had come to see her alone. Cassie had been at work. Fletcher had been in the hallway getting water from the machine when Trent came out of Miriam's room. Fletcher had gone in a few minutes later. Miriam had been quiet, not her usual quiet, a different kind. Fletcher had asked if she was all right. She had said yes and changed the subject. Fletcher had not thought much of it at the time. People in hospitals are quiet in different ways, and you do not always know what it means. But a month later, Miriam had called him. This was 2 weeks before she died. She had asked him to come see her at home without telling Cassie or Trent. He went on a Thursday afternoon. I was at a medical equipment appointment, picking up a new compression device for her legs. She told him that Trent had come to the hospital to talk to her about the house. She told him Trent had suggested that, for estate planning purposes, it might make sense to add his name to the deed. He had framed it as protecting Cassie, ensuring the property passed cleanly, avoiding probate complications. He had brought paperwork. He had a pen. Miriam had told him no. She had smiled when she said no, Fletcher said. She had smiled and said, "Trent, this house goes to Ray. It was built with Ray. You understand that." He had pushed a second time. She had said, "I think you should go now." He had left. He had not mentioned the visit to Cassie as far as Fletcher knew, and Miriam had not told me. I asked Fletcher why he thought she hadn't told me. He said, "I think she didn't want you spending her last weeks angry. I think she was trying to protect the time you had left." I put my coffee mug down. I looked at the photograph on the refrigerator. I looked at it for a long time. I had seen her face do that, the quiet decision, the redirecting. I had seen it hundreds of times in 39 years. She was always more composed than me, always more strategic about when to spend her energy and when to save it. She had known she was dying, and she had chosen to spend those last weeks loving me instead of warning me. I did not cry at the kitchen table with Fletcher. I came close. Instead, I asked him one question. "Did she say anything else?" He nodded. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He took out an envelope. It was sealed, my name written on the front in Miriam's handwriting. The letters were unsteady, not the way her handwriting usually looked, but it was hers. I would know it anywhere. She gave me this to give to you, he said. She said to wait until you needed it. She said you would know when. I took the envelope. I did not open it at the table. I walked to the living room. I sat in my chair, the one that faces the window onto the backyard. The maple tree in the yard had lost most of its leaves. The yard looked bare and November cold. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded twice, her handwriting slow and effortful, the way it had been those last weeks. It said, "Ray, you're going to want to react immediately. Don't. You know how to wait. You've always known how to wait. There is a blue folder in the back of my top dresser drawer under the winter scarves. It has been there since August. Give it to someone you trust before you do anything else. I love you. I loved our whole life. Finish it cleanly, M." I went to the bedroom. I opened the top dresser drawer. Under the scarves, folded inside a plastic sleeve to keep it flat, was a blue folder. Inside were 14 pages. The first page was a handwritten log dated entries going back 18 months in Miriam's writing and occasionally in a second hand I did not immediately recognize. The log documented conversations, dates, requests, Trent asking Miriam about the house, Trent asking about the IRAs, Trent asking at a family dinner in the spring whether I had ever made a formal will, what it contained, whether a trust might be worth considering. The other handwriting, I realized after a moment, was Fletcher's. He had been helping her build this for months. The second page was a letter from an estate attorney named Phyllis Okafor, dated September 14th. It confirmed that Miriam had updated her individual accounts, added directives to the existing estate plan, and taken formal steps to ensure that no secondary account access could be used to make transfers above $500 without a dual signature requirement that had been added to the Fifth Third account in her final weeks. I had not known about the dual signature requirement. I also had not known that when Cassie made those 4 withdrawals, she had triggered an automatic documentation flag that the bank's fraud detection system had noted and preserved. Phyllis had contacted the bank in advance. Every single transaction was on record. The remaining pages were copies, credit inquiries, a request Trent had made apparently through a contact at a title company to assess the current market value of the house on Kenbrook Drive, a text exchange, printed, between Trent and a man I did not know, discussing whether a verbal agreement about a future asset could be documented before probate closed. A screenshot of a message Trent had sent Cassie in August, saying that if Ray gets bad this winter, maybe we should look at what makes sense long-term for the property, just thinking ahead. My wife had been collecting evidence while she was dying. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I thought about Fletcher at the kitchen table, waiting. I thought about Phyllis Okafor, who I had never met, who Miriam had gone to alone in September when she still had the strength to drive. I thought about my wife, practical and quiet and fierce, putting a folder together in the back of a dresser drawer between rounds of treatment, thinking ahead on my behalf when I did not know enough to think ahead for myself. I went back to the kitchen. Fletcher was still at the table. I put the folder on the table between us. I said, "How long have you been helping her with this?" He said, "Since July." I said, "What do we do next?" He told me there was an appointment already scheduled. Phyllis Okafor's office, Thursday at 2. Miriam had set it up. She had put it on Fletcher's calendar, not mine, because she said she was not sure whether Trent had access to my phone's shared calendar through a family plan they had set up years ago. She had thought of everything. I met Phyllis Okafor on Thursday. She was a small woman in her late 50s, precise and unhurried. With reading glasses she took on and off as she moved between documents. She explained what Miriam had done and what documentation existed. She explained what remedies were available. She explained that the 4 withdrawals from the savings account were recoverable, that the sale of the truck could be contested, given the timing and the manner in which the proceeds had been handled, and that the text messages and title inquiry constituted, in her assessment, a documentable pattern of intent that would be useful if we chose to pursue further action. She said, "Your wife was a very organized woman." I said, "You have no idea." The process took 4 months. I am not going to tell you it was clean or easy, because it was not. What I will tell you is what happened at my daughter's house on a Sunday in March. I had continued to have Sunday dinner with Cassie and Trent through the winter. I had said nothing. I had been civil. I had watched Trent at the head of the table in the house my daughter had made into a home, and I had been patient the way Miriam told me to be patient. He believed he had handled things smoothly. He believed the truck money was gone and the withdrawals were spent and the whole matter was behind him. He was not a careful enough man to realize that a careful woman had been 3 steps ahead of him since before he thought of the first step. On the Sunday in March, Phyllis Okafor came with me. She sat in the living room with a briefcase while Cassie served coffee and looked at Phyllis with the expression of someone who knows something is wrong but has not yet been told what. Trent came in from the garage. He saw Phyllis. His posture changed. He said, "Ray, who is this?" I said, "This is my attorney. We have some things to discuss." What followed was 40 minutes I will not describe in detail because my daughter was in the room, and what I watched happen to her face during those 40 minutes is not something I want to make into a story. She had not known most of it. I believe that. I believe Trent had told her versions of things that were convenient for him, and she had trusted him the way wives sometimes trust husbands who are good at being trusted. Phyllis laid out the documentation, the withdrawals, the truck, the title inquiry, the text messages, the hospital visit, and what Trent had asked my dying wife to sign. Cassie put her hand over her mouth. Trent said there were explanations. Phyllis said, "You're welcome to provide them." He did not. When Phyllis had finished, she placed a packet of documents in front of Trent. The packet contained a formal demand for restitution of $18,300 in savings account funds, $14,500 representing the proceeds of the truck sale, and documentation of the title inquiry being submitted to the county recorder's office as part of the estate record. She also informed him that the bank had preserved all transaction records and that a referral to the county prosecutor's office for review was pending, contingent on whether restitution was made within 30 days. She said it the way people say things that have been prepared carefully and mean exactly what they say. Trent looked at me. I looked back at him. I did not say anything. There was nothing I needed to say. Miriam had already said everything that needed saying, in 14 pages in a blue folder from the back of a dresser drawer, 2 months before she died. Cassie asked me to stay after Phyllis left. Trent had gone upstairs. I sat with my daughter in her kitchen. She made fresh coffee. We sat across from each other. She said, "Dad, I didn't know about the hospital. I didn't know he went to see her alone." "I know," I said. She said, "I should have paid more attention." I said, "You trusted him. That's not the same as being wrong about everything." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Mom knew, didn't she? Mom saw it coming, and she planned all this without telling either of us." "Yes," I said. Cassie looked at the kitchen window. She looked like she was working something out behind her eyes. She said, "That's so like her." "That's exactly like her," I said. Restitution was made in full before the 30 days were up. Trent hired his own attorney, who apparently reviewed the documentation and advised him clearly on his options. The $32,800 came back in 2 payments. The prosecutor's review was closed without referral. The marriage is another matter. That is my daughter's life, and I have stayed out of it, except to tell her once, clearly, that I would support whatever she decided and mean it either way. It is June now. I am sitting on the back porch of the house on Kenbrook Drive. The maple tree is full again. I planted that tree the year Cassie was born. Miriam picked the spot. She said it needed the afternoon light. She was right. She was right about the spot and the tree and the folder and every single thing she ever set her mind to. I drink my coffee in the mornings, and I look at a photograph, and sometimes I tell her how it all came out. She would have found the outcome satisfying, I think. Not the damage to the marriage, not any of the pain that went with it, but the clean ending she planned for, the way it was finished on her terms, with her thinking, from 14 pages she put together while she was still strong enough to hold a pen. There is a thing people say about grief, that it changes shape over time, that it does not go away, but it gets easier to carry. I have found that to be more or less true. What I have also found, which no one warned me about, is that grief and gratitude can exist in the same chest at the same time without canceling each other out. I am grateful for 39 years. I am grateful for a woman who loved me practically and fiercely and thought ahead for me when I was too broken to think ahead for myself. If your family has ever looked at what you built and decided it was theirs to take, if you have ever watched someone treat a person you loved as an asset instead of a person, drop a single word in the comments, just one. I read every one of them. And if someone in your life is carrying something they have not told you about yet, maybe check on them this week, not to ask what's wrong, just to sit with them for a while. Sometimes that is enough. Sometimes that is everything. I have thought a lot about the order in which things happened. Not the legal steps, not the paperwork, not the 30 days and the 2 payments, the order underneath all of that. The real sequence. Trent did not become the man who walked into a hospital room with a pen and a deed because he woke up one morning and decided to be that man. He became that man slowly, through 100 smaller decisions that no one called out, including me. I watched the lean happen over 9 years, and I told myself it was not my place. That is the part I sit with, not what he did. What I did not do when I still could have done something small. Miriam saw it more clearly than I did. She always had. And when she understood that her time was running out and that I would be left without the tools to protect myself, she did not panic. She did not confront. She thought, she planned. She called Fletcher. She called Phyllis. She put 14 pages in a blue folder and she tucked it under the winter scarves where only someone who knew her drawers would look. That is the kind of clear-eyed, quiet courage that does not make headlines. It is not dramatic. It does not look like strength from the outside. But it is the hardest kind of strength there is. Choosing to use your remaining energy not on anger, not on grief, but on building something solid for the person you are leaving behind. I think about what she taught me, not in words, in the way she actually lived. She never cut corners on the things that mattered. When she said she would do something, she did it, even at the end, especially at the end. That kind of integrity is not born overnight. It is built in the daily, ordinary moments when no one is watching, and it would be easier to let it go. She never let it go. That is why I trusted her. That is why, when I opened that folder, I knew without question that every page was right and true. And I think about Fletcher, who sat with her through July and August and never told me, because she asked him not to, because she was the one running the plan, and she knew what she needed from each person. He did not freelance. He did not spreelance. He did not step ahead of her. He waited, and when the moment came, he handed me the envelope and let it unfold the way she had designed it. That kind of steadiness, the willingness to hold a hard thing quietly until it is needed, is rarer than people realize. What I have come to believe is this: the people who take from others are almost never stopped by confrontation alone. They are stopped by documentation, by patience, by someone who was paying attention long before the taking began. Miriam understood that. She did not have the strength to fight. So she built the case instead and gave it to someone who did. I am 64 years old. I have a bad knee and a pension and a maple tree in the backyard that is full again. I still talk to her photograph some mornings. I do not think that is strange. I think that is just what it looks like when you have spent 39 years with someone who made you better at being a person. She made me better, even from a dresser drawer, even after she was gone. That is the whole story.